We'll call this meeting to order. Environment Sustainability Committee for Wednesday, July the 20th. Welcome, everyone. Is there any declarations of conflict of interest? Any of the items? Not seeing none. Can I have approval of the agenda? Moved by Judy, seconded by Greg. Can I have approval of the minutes, June 20th? Moved by Judy, seconded by Greg. Is there any business arising from the minutes? Seeing none, we'll move into the reports and discussion. Design costs for Phase 3 of the Bypass Highway Active Transportation Pathway. Before I send that off to Ramona, I just want to say that the first two phases have turned out excellent. Seems to be a lot of usage on them. Shouldn't be surprised, but surprised how much usage for seeing the Phase 2 was just completed. So they've done a good job. It's all hydroseeded, looks really good. They've been cutting the grass along the berm there. It's been long. So Phase 3 should be the easiest of all phases. And Ramona, I'll let you take it from here.
Sure. So for the purpose of this report, all right. Okay, everybody hear me now? Okay, so for the recommendation presented here, we're looking for committee support to increase the PO that's been raised for CBCL to complete the design and engineering services for Phase 3 of the AT pathway. So as you know, we would have awarded this tender back at the beginning of the project for all three phases. But as we've gone through the process of designing and dealing with all the different challenges that come with each section and each phase of the project, we have added significant scope work to the project. So this final amount would allow us to complete all the design work for Phase 3. They also prepare all the tender documents for us. They help us with the evaluation. And then at that point, we take over the construction management. So looking for support for that increase to the PO. And I do believe this will need to go to Finance Committee as well, if it is improved here.
Okay, thank you for that, Ramona. And I do want to say, I know we've had many discussions over this, Ramona, and you've done an excellent job of moving this on, moving it through, and it was going to be looking at one point at three different phases over 3 different years. Have to compliment you. It's actually becoming a 2-year project. For 22-5 to be able to finish the third phase and be able to finish it this fall. Excellent work. So can I have a mover and a seconder to move on for the extra $22,000 to finish this project? Moved by Councillor Rivera, seconded by Councillor McCabe. Excellent. That's and again, Ramona, I want to say what a great job you've done on that. It's been really well done.
Great, thank you. I'm really happy how it's turning out, and we're seeing people using it already, which is wonderful. Great connection there to the Brackley existing route as well. So once we have this Phase 3 and done, it'll be a real legacy project for us with this committee.
And you're right. And the other thing that we'll add is as many people that are using it now, when the third phase gets done, it takes us down to the Confederation Trail.
Yes,
so that's
exactly.
a real good connection, taking you right in town or taking you out to Brackley or wherever you want to go. So.
Yep.
Again, thanks a lot.
Yeah, and just, Mr. Chair, just one point, you had mentioned Phase 3 being completed within the budget for Phase 2, so that will be a subsequent committee report that will come. So currently working with the province just on the details of the funding agreement, ensuring that we can amend that agreement to include Phase 3. So still working on that piece, but it's looking positive.
Perfect, perfect. I will say, if anything does come up, I do have a meeting with the new Public Works chair there. Or not chair, minister. So, but I think everything sounds like it's in order.
Great. Maybe you and I can have a discussion offline about that so you can have the information you need.
Okay, perfect. Next agenda item is ICIP applications for the transit electrification. I think everybody recalls whenever this came to the budget, we were excited to be moving off to get into the electric buses. So this is basically an organizational chart of how we're going to get to that point, and yet how we continue the buses going without having any breakdowns or whatever, and then the surge in ridership, how do we keep up with it? So again, Ramona, I take it this is yours. So do you want to give us a rundown on that?
Yes, so Mr. Chair, so this is our, essentially, as you know, we've been working on our electrification project for some time now. We finally sort of come to a consensus on what that program should really look like, and we're prepared now to submit our applications to Icip. So as you may remember, we had some correspondence with the province on the Icip funding program under the public transit stream, and they've earmarked 23.8 million for this project. So this is now our formal application for those funds that have been earmarked for the project. So as you've noted, I'm sort of breaking this down into three components. The first component being an essential step in order to bridge the gap between where we are now and where we'll need to be with electrification. So we do have some challenges with our aging Eldorado fleet. We purchased those in 2015, and they were, 7 to 9 years old at that point. So they are coming up to that end of their useful life. So we do want to put a little bit of capital improvement into those. We also have found a source of an additional used diesel buses that would help us bridge that gap, and we would like to purchase 3 new diesel buses. We don't love the fact that we're purchasing diesel, but what I'll note about that is it is an essential step to get us from here to electric, because there's a lot of preparatory work that needs to happen before the electric buses can be fully operated, and I'll talk about that a bit in phase 2. So that's sort of the components of phase 3. Phase 1. The first, with the purchase of the used buses, why we're going this route is it means there's fewer diesel buses in our fleet for a shorter period of time. So if we were to purchase, say, 5 new diesel buses, those would have a lifespan of 15 years. That means we're not retiring a lot of that fleet for some time, and we really want to kind of move away from diesel and move to electric. Obviously, we do still need a few new diesel buses to make that happen, but as you'll see, we can get 5 used diesel buses for $625,000, whereas with the 3 new diesel buses, we're spending significantly more. So it's a good sort of cost-saving measure that will allow us to bridge the gap without investing too much in new diesel. With phase 2, this is really about getting everything ready for when the electric buses arrive. So right now, we're working on an acquisition of a property in order to build that facility. The cost of the constructing of the new transit facility, this will house those electric buses, as well as set up solar battery energy storage. We call it the BESS system. So essentially what that helps us do is we generate some energy on site, and we also have battery storage on site. And if you know about maritime electric rates, we're always trying to reduce that peak demand. We don't want to be, if we're charging everything all at once, we're going to see really high surcharges for that service. So with the battery storage, it allows us to charge them more it allows us to sort of store energy that we can then use to charge them and not rely constantly on a real-time draw from the system. And then we also have the electric chargers. So with these expenditures at phase 2, we're really ready then to acquire the electric buses and have them in full operation. And then with phase 3, this is the purchase of 7 electric buses. They'll arrive when the facility is completed. We'll be able to put them into operation right away. And from that point forward, we can make a commitment as the capital area transit system that we would move with electric going forward, because we'd be fully set up in order to make that commitment. So we've got the 3-phase program at a cost of $21.6 million. We'll use the full amount allocated to us through Icip. The funding, as you know, for Icip is 40% federal, 33% provincial funding, and then we are the ultimate recipient and pay 26.67%. So last thing to know, because I know this is a lot of information and I'm happy to answer any questions, is that there's 2 pieces of the project in terms of the facility, the land, the facility, the new facility will all be owned solely by the City of Charlottetown. Owning the facility between the 3 municipalities would be challenging and lead to a lot of issues in terms of the operations, but we will have a lease agreement with Stratford and Cornwall, so they will pay a portion of the costs of the rental running of the facility. This is similar to what they do in Stratford with their emergency services building. It's owned by one party, and then Stratford pays a lease into it as well as a few other parties. So we'll be working on those agreements. And then the fleet itself, the buses will be, as usual, owned by all three municipalities. So there's a little bit difference in terms of our contribution with the city of Charlottetown is going to be higher because we're covering the cost of that. So our full contribution for the project, and if you think about a $23.8 million project, our share being $5.5 million, that's a really quite a good deal when you consider all the components that we're getting here. And then these costs will be incurred over 4 fiscal years. We'll have some costs in 2022, 2023, and then we'll be wrapping up the project. Not in 2056, there is a typo there, 2026, I'll just note that. So happy to answer. I don't know how many of us will be around at that point, so let's stick with 2026. So happy to answer questions. I know that's a lot of information, and ideally we would be able to bring this to Finance Committee tomorrow, but whatever committee would like to, how they would like to proceed.
So just a comment, Ramona. We purchased the land, did we not?
So currently, the land purchase is going to finance for a final decision tomorrow.
So it's all been approved? And the funding's been approved, council approved to buy that piece of land?
So the funding, there is no funding on the land purchase. It's
Well, I mean, our budget,
yes,
yeah.
it is in the capital budget for this year.
So, okay, I kind of thought that we already agreed to purchase it, so it's just
This
going through the
committee has
formality now.
agreed.
It's agreed, it's just getting
Yeah.
the paperwork done.
Exactly.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, no, it's more than the paperwork. We do need the approval of both Finance Committee and Council. I believe there was a resolution, Ramona, correct me if I'm wrong, allowing staff to go into negotiations to purchase, but no, there was no, so going to Finance on
I thought it came back
Thursday.
to us with the price and everything, it was agreeable, and we had the
And it
conversation
was
with
sent
the
to
location,
finance.
and we agreed to buy it, and we put the money in the budget to purchase it.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so we approved the capital budget to purchase it.
Yeah, we are now doing it.
Okay,
But
so
the
like
actual, so it's going to Finance, to a special Finance Committee meeting on Thursday at noon, because the Finance Committee asked for an assessment of the building. And so that's happening Thursday at noon, and we hope to get it on the council agenda with a positive approval on Monday evening.
Okay.
Because this project, this is the piece to make, this is the first piece of all of this project. If we don't have the land, then we're not going anywheres.
No, but then that's why I'm making the point. I believe we had this discussion. We discussed the land. We had 3 different options. This is what council said we were looking to buy. And this is where, and that's why we put the money that we put in the budget to purchase this land, to move. The longer this takes, the longer it takes before we get electrical buses here. And everybody wants to move to electrification of our transit system, so.
You're right.
So I don't know what the holdup will be at finance. We'll see what happens. They meet on Thursday, I think they said, so we'll see what happens. But as far as my recollection is, and Councilor McCabe or Councilor Rivera, you can let me know if I'm wrong, but my recollection is we've discussed this and we've given it the green light.
Yep.
Okay.
Good.
The other thing I'd like to say is I really like the way you broke it down. And I really like, for now, bridging the gap, here's what needs to be done. Laying the groundwork for electric, just what the CAO was talking about, getting the building, getting the land, and then the full electrification. So I think the community as a whole, I mean, we've heard them. Nobody likes diesel, like you said. And we've heard from the community in the past when we were purchasing the last used diesel buses. We don't want to either, but I think it's part of the steps to get to the electrification. So I don't know, Councilor Rivera or Councilor McCabe, you guys have any questions?
Good.
All good? So do we need a mover in a second to move this ahead, or it's?
Sure, you may as well.
Okay, Councilor McCabe moves it, Councilor Rivera seconds it to move this off to finance. Again, Ramona, excellent work, excellent work.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, third, switch program, Hamad,
Thank you, Mr.
you're on the
Chair.
floor, buddy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Firstly, folks, July 12th, we've accomplished 1 year with the Switch program, and since we've done our 1 year mark, we have seen exceptional results. About 550 homeowners attempted to participate in this program, and as of June, we had 131 participants. This is twice as much as previous months. You could see in the figures below that there has been a huge influx in the past month, and that was mainly because Stratford was in the news saying that they ran out of money. So there
In the
was
media there, yeah, I figured that was
exactly.
gonna
So
drive.
that caused
yeah.
a huge influx of residents trying to make use of the Switch program in Charlottetown. So 74 projects have been completed to date in the past 12 months, double the amount which was expected, and it is the fastest growing. Sorry, it is the fastest growing municipal PACE program in Canada. Other than that, this program has brought in significant environmental, local economic, and savings to individual homeowners, and exceeding pre-launch forecast. If you scroll, look into your sheets, you could see Figure 1 and Figure 2. Figure 1 shows the amount of participants who inquired about the program, and June was 131, but a month before it was 54. So we've more than doubled because of that news story. And signed agreement, of course, translates. The retention rate was 47, and in June, and in May it was 27 who signed agreements. So these 74 projects worth approximately $1 million and have been fully completed. There are 162 projects worth of $2.5 million underway.
What's that, what was that again, Herman? There's what?
162 projects
Yeah.
worth $2.53 million underway. So value of signed participation agreements is a total of $3.56 million. That's the table 1 has a breakdown of that if you want the exact numbers. Average project size is 15,000 Canadian dollars. There have been a wide variety of project types and value being financed. The lowest project we've received so far is $734, and maximum value was, of course, $40,000. It's rapidly growing. We are seeing a significant increase in heat pumps to displace oil heating, which has been extremely expensive in the past few months. That is the most common type of project we're seeing, followed by solar, and then insulation, windows, and other projects, which includes a few geothermal as well. When you look at the value of these projects, solar takes the lead at 50% of the project funding is going towards solar, then heat pumps, windows and doors, and others. This pie chart could be seen in Figure 3 for visual representation. There is a network effect which has been noticed. What that means is when a resident goes through the Switch program, it usually convinces their neighbors to join in and make use of the program as well. So this helps as an automatic marketing tool in smaller communities, and we're seeing that here. Figure 4 shows a representation of all those individual calls we've received in the areas, and you could see when one area gets it, a lot more within that neighborhood start seeing those calls coming in. So we have passed our 80% mark of our first disbursement. That triggered us to apply for our second disbursement from FCM. So hopefully within the next 30 days, we're going to get our second disbursement, our second set of money to continue the program. When we talk about greenhouse gases, to date, there have been 230 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent reductions associated. But this is mainly looking at oil to heat pump and electric baseboard to heat pumps, solar, and insulation. So that is, again, a significant amount of greenhouse gas emission reduction. One thing I want to clearly mention here as well, for senior homeowners, we're seeing a few senior homeowners call in. We're giving them some special accommodation where whenever a senior homeowner calls in, we are, majority of our process is online via phone, based out of Nova Scotia through our administrator. But whenever a senior requires assistance, there are individuals available at City Hall, only for seniors who are able to print and scan the documents needed for the seniors to better make better use of the program. The city staff is continuing and will continue to administer the program at 0% interest rate as long as we have budget. By budget, I mean money left in the program. And hopefully, we find other fundings to continue this program in long-term success for the city.
Perfect, perfect. Councillor McCabe, you have a question?
More comment, but thank you. And thank you, Hamad, for your report. And obviously, we're seeing the great benefits for this program for sure. But I really just want to comment on the senior piece. I really think that that is really admirable when we look at people. I mean, and then not all seniors are able to navigate our world of technology and stuff. So that's really commendable, actually. Thank you for thinking of that group.
Harmad, just a couple of questions.
Sure.
So the value of the signed participation agreement is 3.59. That's to date, I assume. So what is the total allocation? You say the 85% triggered our new allocation from FCM. So where are we now as far as what funding is left compared to what's spent?
Are you asking how much money do we have or how much we were promised? It was around $10 million.
Okay, so there's still 6.5 million to be allocated.
Not all of it could be used towards the loan part. A small portion of it, I shouldn't say small,
But there's still quite a bit left.
Yes, there's
Yeah, that's
a
really what I was
decent
getting at.
amount
I know
left.
our Stratford community next to it ran out.
Yes, we have a few
And I
more
know
months.
You're right, when it was on the news, it seemed to really reflect a lot of the new applicants and probably the news about the program too. But I'm just wondering where we are. So we're still in pretty good financial shape. For everyone that applies, there is
Ramona, I think you have something to add there? Or
Mr. Chair, if it's okay with you, Hamad, do you know the timeline in terms of like what we're projecting for when we'll run out of funds based on the current sort of participation?
I can share that with you if you're comfortable with me. Approximately 8 months.
we've got 3.592 allocated now, and you think in the next 8 months, we're gonna go through the next 6 million? Okay,
So the 6 million, so it's approximately 7 million in loans, and then the rest is program financing and stuff from the back
and
end.
just what are you using to come up with that? Because if we've spent 3.5 in a year, what makes you think we're gonna double that in the next 8 months?
Maybe I'll take that if you don't mind, Hamad. So those are, the 3.5 million is for those projects that are completed and that we're sending the money out the door. But as Hamad noted, we have 550 participant agreements signed. So some of those funds are yet to be allocated, but they're earmarked for projects that have already been, right? So 6.5 million includes earmarks funds as well as funds that are yet to be earmarked. Does that make sense? That's correct, right, Hamad? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that it says completed projects, so a million's out the door.
Yes.
And I thought the 3.592 was all signed, participating today.
But yeah,
Correct?
yes.
Okay. And there also is a 5% fee for anyone that's applying. Is this applying for the loan part, or if you just wanted to pay for it, just get the funding without the loan? Do you still pay that 5% administrative fee?
Yes, that's a 5% administrative fee for everyone
Okay.
as of today.
All right. No, thank you very much, Armand. Councilor Rivera, you got any questions? Anybody else? Oh, again, it's obviously it's a really good program. This is tied in with the federal program, correct? Like if you wanted to apply for a heat pump, or you wanted to apply for solar panels and so on, they have a federal program that also gives grants to
So
help pay for it?
you could apply to get the Greener Homes grant on top of this, but it has nothing to, how do I say this? This does not make the process easier for that. The federal government has its own system.
Yeah.
We could give you guidelines and tips on how to get that money, but that's about it. The resident has to individually apply for those federal rebates, not grants, sorry.
Yeah, and that seems to be a little bit of a, okay, so they are separate because I have been talking to some people that are looking to get the federal grant.
We do work with the province, so the provincial grants. The PACE Atlantic team works with the resident to help get those, but not the federal one. Unfortunately, the system's totally different. And
Yeah, and you have to have your okay from the federal one before you start to get the money.
so, the
Can't have
federal
the heat.
government requires a pre and post energy audit, and it's a different kind of audit where the auditor is supposed to put in the information in the federal system in the NRCan websites. So they have their own way of selecting who is approved and who's not.
Which
And
it-
you
which
don't
it-
know till you're done if you're going to get the money or not.
Yeah, which is what Councillor McCabe brought up, and I agree. It's great to have some help for the seniors trying to navigate around that, so. Again, thank you very much, Armand. Good job.
Thank you.
New community garden. Katrina, update on the community gardens.
Yes, thank you very
You're
much.
on.
Perfect.
Okay.
So some of you may remember an application that went in partnership with Immigrant and Refugee Services Association of PEI that we found out we were successful for in April of 2022. And through that, the funding stream, which was, yeah, as I said, the PEI Alliance for Mental Wellbeing, we received $32,200 towards support for a group of URSA volunteers working to build a new community garden on city parkland, as well as to create a community garden framework for the city. So with that funding application, we did hire a project facilitator through URSA, who is leading this team of volunteers through the process of starting the garden. So we've called them the Community Garden Leadership Team. And the group is made up of newcomers to Canada who are looking to get more connected with their community and to do so through community gardening. So they're doing workshops that build skills not only around gardening, but also around the actual like administration and management of a community garden, as well as the design of it and that kind of thing. So through that process, myself and that project facilitator have worked with the Community Garden Leadership Team as well as the Parks and Rec Department to determine a suitable location for the garden, which is probably sort of one of the more challenging aspects of the project. And after looking at many different sites, a site at Frank Macaulay Park was chosen as where they would like to attempt to move forward with. So there is a map attached to the report that with an X on it showing where in the park they would like to do it. That site was selected based on numerous criteria, a large one being proximity to where the volunteers themselves live and where they can easily access, but also its location within priority zones that the city had already identified for community gardens in Charlottetown, as well as access to water hookups, sunlight, space, and adequate parking, all in hopes to minimize any sort of negative impacts on the surrounding community. So as I mentioned, we worked with Parks and Rec staff on this, and they are in favor of this location and have also spoken with the ward councillor and received his support. So because of all of this, the next step is to ensure that the community is in support of it. So with that, we have a community information session planned for July 26th from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. at the Murchison Centre. So the intent of this would be to seek input from the community as to their support or concerns, as well as to connect with any members of the community that may, when the garden is ready to go, be interested in having a plot at the garden or support in any other way. So there will be letters sent out to the neighborhood to invite them to the session, as well as it's been posted on city social media, and there'll be a sign put up in the park so that people are aware. And with the city's or with the community's support, plans will move forward with the design and installation of the garden with hopes of having it being created for early fall to allow for fall planting. And then just to let you know, the second component of the project is the creation of the community garden framework I mentioned. So this will really help to further identify and clarify how the city works with the community to create community gardens. So it will include policy as well as supporting documents such as an MOU and handbook. And we have procured a consultant to do that work and are just kind of in the process of finalizing that agreement and getting the work started. So the hope is that with the support of this group to start the community garden and the creation of this supporting framework, that we will be able to better work with groups in the future around community gardens and also set up this group to independently execute the garden moving forward. And as you can see in the last paragraph, all of the funding came through the PEI Alliance for Mental Wellbeing. We don't have any financial contributions from the city itself, aside from in-kind staff support on the project, and then the agreement to allow the use of the land and a water hookup and a small annual stipend in years moving forward, which is what we do for the existing community garden at Des Brisay Park.
Perfect. Perfect. Any questions? Good? Good. Yeah. Katrina, just curious, how many plots are we talking about in that location?
Yeah, it hasn't been determined yet. It's not a terribly big space. I would say it's a similar in size to Des Brisay Park, which I think has around 30, but I would think they would start smaller than that. So they haven't determined the design, and some of that will be informed by the community consultation. Like if there's concerns over a certain amount or if there's a large demand, they may try and squeeze in more. So as you can see from the map, they're looking at the space right by the bathrooms in that park. So kind of it's like elevated
right,
off
yeah.
to the side, but there is another suitable space on the other side of the park as well that isn't being used right now. So there's no plans to develop it at the moment, but say there was a lot of interest, there would be some room for expansion on the other side of the park.
Okay. And the $300 stipend,
Yep.
the annual, what's that go towards?
So that was determined, Des Brisay Park was getting annual compost given to them by the city and a few other things. And instead of taking care of some of those tasks ourselves, it was decided that they would get a $300 stipend to use as they saw fit throughout the year, in hopes that they might start to compost themselves and but if they needed compost or tools or anything like that. So it is up to their discretion. However, I will just note that was the number that was decided on for this year, but a review of that amount will be done through the creation of the community garden framework, and it may change in future years, whether increased or decreased, but anything of that nature would come through for approval along with the approval of the framework itself.
Right on. Okay. Thank you. All good?
The framework will come back to this committee?
Yes,
For
yeah.
approval?
Yeah, it probably won't be ready until sometime into the winter, but it will, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, no further questions. We'll move on to Katrina again on the cosmetic pesticide update. Katrina?
Sure, thank you. So this is one that was requested as an update. I will also would like to give credit where credit is due and say that Jess Brown was actually the one that put this report together, but in her absence, I am presenting it to all of you. So as you all know, we've had the cosmetic pesticide bylaw in place since 2017, and the purpose is to regulate the use of non-domestic pesticides in Charlottetown. So those that are used commercially or industrially and must be applied by a professional applicator. So basically what it does is it restricts the use of of certain substances within city limits unless they're approved for an exception. So cosmetic pesticide applicators are eligible for an exception to the bylaw on a case-by-case basis, really only in the case of infestations or in particular scenarios. And so with that exception, there is a $50 fee to apply and to proceed with the use of the non-domestic pesticides within city limits. This is because non-domestic pesticides are noxious substances that can potentially cause harm to the environment and the species living in that environment, and not only the ones that they're intending to eradicate. So generally they are, of course, applied with the intent of eliminating a pest infestation, but they can have quite an array of other effects negatively on the environment. So this is the reason that this was implemented was because was based on the polluter pays principle, which is a commonly accepted practice that requires the companies who are undertaking these practices that potentially harm the environment to take financial accountability for the actions and the potential environmental harm. So essentially, the fee is acting as a deterrent for the use of the pollutants, and hopefully incentivizing the seeking of other avenues to address these problems. I will also note that the fee allows us to hire additional summer support to support the administration of the bylaw and to carry out the administrative work and the inspections themselves. And it's also been used for the development and printing of educational resources, workshops, and working with partners on research trials. And then there's also a note here, just that we have noted in past years that some households are applying these pesticides year after year. So one of those resources that was developed was with the intent to educate those sort of reoccurring cases, as we called them, on preventative measures. So those households that are applying these pesticides year after year receive these educational resources to hopefully help them prevent the need to do so in the future. And we did find in 2021 that approximately 40% of applicants fell into this category, sort of having that chronic issue where they needed to spray generally for chinch bugs. And that was down a little bit from 2020, in which it was 43%. And then just lastly, I will note that in 2021, we received 274 applications, all of which were approved. And just for comparison, we received 251 in 2020, 256 in 2019, 315 in 2018, and 305 in 2017.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Councillor Rivard?
Thank you, Councillor Bernard. Thank you, Katrina. Just a couple of, I guess, hopefully a couple of questions. They may multiply here in a second. So Cornwall recently got rid of the $50 surcharge. Are you familiar with why they got rid of it?
I'm not familiar with why they removed it. I would imagine, well, no, I shouldn't speculate. I'm not familiar with why they
Okay.
got rid of it.
No, I'm just curious. I haven't reached out either, so I assumed based on what you're sharing here that just the sheer numbers, let's say 274 applied, 274 were approved. I'm assuming the process is the homeowner calling the company first. Company comes out, identifies that it is indeed chinch bug. And then the next step after that is to have someone from the city go out to confirm that it's chinch bug. And then we charge them $50 for the confirmation. But if 274 that applied all were approved, you know, maybe the $50 charge, I mean, based on what we've seen to date, based on the last few years, there's not many being denied. So that tells me that the companies that are doing it, they're being accountable. They're, you know, because the success rate is probably 100%, that they're not doing something just for the sake of doing it. It's just maybe it's time that we look at that $50 charge, eliminate it, considering that the cost of everything is going up. I know $50 doesn't seem like a lot, but for people that are using it every year, it is an added cost right now. And if we can eliminate that, that would be great. If I'd be concerned if the numbers were showing different. I'd be concerned if we had 500 applications or come in and only 200 were being approved. I'd say so be it. But I'm seeing different. So I mean, I would certainly strongly consider eliminating that $50 charge to homeowners right now. Leave it to the professionals. They appear to be doing a good job assessing. And I guess, we do have a bylaw in place that talks about what can be sprayed, what can't be. So, they can't go and spray just anything because it has to fall within our bylaw. Is it different from weeds? The chinch bug, whatever sprayed, is it something? So for chinch bugs, is it something that's outside of our bylaw for allowable uses, or same product?
So the products that they're using to treat for these pests are currently listed within the bylaw as not being permitted for use within Charlottetown. So like somebody couldn't just go to the store and buy these, and even the applicators themselves are not allowed to spray them without our permission, without the exception to the bylaw. So yeah, I guess if we were to say remove the exception clause altogether, then they wouldn't be allowed to spray at all, is what that effectively would do. I would also just say that the removal of the $50 fee, I do see your point in that they do seem to be following the rules at the moment. I think the challenge there is that by removing the $50 fee, any incentive to follow those rules is now gone. I would imagine at the beginning they would continue to do so, but I think there's a lot of people out there who that $50 fee does act as a incentive to perhaps pursue other avenues. I mean, just spraying at all is quite expensive, and so that is also an incentive to pursue other avenues. But I think that this is just another reminder that this is not ideally the way that that these issues should be managed from an environmental perspective. And I would also say that regardless of whether we do the exception or not, if we were to keep the bylaw, we do have the administrative side of it, and the $50 is really important in allowing us to offset those administrative costs.
Thank you. The product that we use or they use to spray for cinch bugs, can it be used to effectively spray for weeds? Which is really kind of what when we put the cosmetic bylaw in place, initially was really for the purpose of just the randomly spraying and keeping lawns nice and getting rid of weeds. There really wasn't a whole lot of talk about cinch bugs. You know, I've had at least 4 people in my area that their lawns have been totally destroyed that they've made me aware of. I know the cost to replace a lawn is substantial. I mean, we had some work done in our backyard not too long ago, and just to sod a quarter of our backyard, it was north of $1,000. You know, to see a cinch bug, you know, eat away at it, it's troublesome. At the same time, like I said, I just see Cornwall eliminate that $50 fee. Cost of everything's going up through the roof. If there's any way that we could park that $50 fee and maybe still do our due diligence, you know, maybe helpful to the people, the residents of Charlottetown that just can't. And I'd hate to see them have to replace their lawn, you know, over a decision over $50. I'm just throwing it out there as an option.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rivard. Anybody else? The question I have for Katrina is Katrina, of the 273 that were approved, do you know how many of them of the 273 are repeat? Like I assume there's repeats every year.
40% of them.
It is 40%.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I used to be one of those. Every year it seemed I got chinched. I got a couple of hills on my property, and it seemed to be that's where the chinch was hitting. But through some of the literature that came out, so I learned that some of the seed that has clover in it was chinch don't like. Now I haven't had chinch for 2 years. But having said that, what if, Councillor Rivard, if we got Katrina to gather the information that Cornwall made their decision on and brought it back to this committee and just see what they were looking at when they made their decision and see if there's anything there that we want to look at. Does that work? Yeah. Is that okay, Katrina?
Yeah, certainly. I can reach out to Cornwall and get more information.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions on any other items? Everybody's good? I do want to say I'm glad I'm here today. I know this is Ramona's last meeting with us. So yeah, I'll probably have a box of Kleenex. But anyway, Ramona, you know, I said it before, you've done an admirable job in the position you've had, and environment sustainability has grown leaps and bounds with your leadership. We are going to miss you. Do hope that you take time to reconsider, possibly come back to the city. But again, fantastic job, and you will be missed. But thank you very much. Okay. Motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor McCabe, second by Councillor Rivard. Thank you, everyone, for coming.